for the paper Discrimination, Misogyny and Harassment, example from open source software. So Vandana, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Valentina. I'm going to share my screen now. So
Sergio, start the record. Okay.
So do you see my screen?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. So should I get started?
Yes, you can start,
okay,
please.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much. Like I was saying earlier too, I really appreciate the opportunity to present at this workshop. I really enjoy this. Also, a little bit background about this article. This is an article that I have worked very hard on emotionally and also professionally, but this is an article that has been bounced around a lot because of the type of things I'm sharing here, which is I'm discussing discrimination, misogyny, and harassment in open source communities. So I think it has had a lot of pushback also. So I really do appreciate this opportunity of presenting it here. With that, my name is Vandana Singh. I'm in, so actually I just got emailed today during the conference that my promotion went through. So I'm a professor at the University of Tennessee in School of Information Sciences. And I've been conducting research on open source software for more than 20 years. My dissertation research was on open source as well. Today, I'm talking about my research on women of open source software. The reason that I have focused on the experiences of women of open source software is because of the diversity problem that we hear about in the IT industry, women being, such low participants and their experiences not being very good. Open source software is really just an extreme niche of that. The percentage is very, very low, 2 to 3% reported, sometimes 10, but never more than 10% women. And their experiences are also exemplary in how bad they are sometimes. So that's why my focus has been in understanding what are the experiences of women and how we can make it really a better environment for women to contribute, to participate, to reap all the benefits that males will, when they are using this, I will actually click on the chat so that I can follow that. Oh, thank you. So, that's the objective, is to understand the experiences of women so that we can make these environments better for women to participate in. In this particular research, my questions were to really understand what is the nature of sexism and discrimination as reported by women. So this is not observed, but this is as reported. As I wanted to see how women are sharing their experiences of harassment or misogyny or discrimination. And I've been studying these women's open source software forums focused on women, not women only, but focused on women as a safe space. That's what they seem to be experienced by women as safe spaces. So I wanted to also, of course, talk about how women support each other in these environments. So this again goes back to this value of safe spaces, creating safe spaces and nurturing them so that they can be supportive. And then also, what is the impact when we know there is misogyny or harassment happening? How does it actually impact these women? What are the short-term, long-term impact on the women and the overall community? So with that, objective, I did this research, and the data set that I'm using is, these are the 5 open source women-focused discussion forums from which I have collected all their messages and then analyzed these messages from the discussion forums. So overall, this data set is 10,702 messages from 1,344 participants. So I've done different sets of analysis on this data set. In this paper, I'm talking about only the messages that we had coded with sexism or discrimination. So there were 891 messages, about 10% on 8-9% messages, which are about sexism and discrimination among the entire data set. So with that, I will quickly go into the results of what I found out about the nature of sexism and discrimination. What are the types of things that women face, and how how is it experienced? So one of the things that came across after looking at all the messages and after analyzing the, what kind of experiences they were having, it came across more important as what the experience is, but that this experience was persistent. It kept happening over and over again. It is common that it happens. And once it is so common and persistent, it becomes normalized, which means people who observe it don't even think twice about it. Something that is misogyny or sexism-based comment, people don't even, so, one of the things we were talking about earlier was this concept of awareness of problems that people face if they are from diverse backgrounds. So if it is so common that the problem doesn't even register, that's an issue. So in open source, that is what women were talking about, where that it was persistent and that it was normalized because it just kept happening. The types of harassment that they talk about, that what they were experiencing, were unsolicited communication, often sexual, often talking about, giving them pictures, sexual pictures, sharing those kind of things with them. Sometimes extremes of threats of rape and death for women who were either speaking out or were not doing something that was, acceptable in the cohort, the male cohort. There are also retaliation for complaining. So if a woman if she faces something and then she wants to complain about it, about the problem, then there was retaliation for that kind of behavior. Sometimes mentors, again, we talked about mentors too earlier. So mentors is definitely a great idea, but sometimes in these, forums, women were talking about how mentors were also part of the process of, creating that kind of harassment. Another type of experience of sexism and discrimination was that women felt like they were not being heard. And that could be in, anything as simple as something I'm contributing, it is being completely ignored, to something more substantial like the complaint that they are bringing forward. And so their opinions or their things are just kind of skipped over and not being heard. Another example was that sometimes the OSS documentation or representation of products were sexist. So, they're using women's images, not so flattering, or what women don't think the product should be sharing in their documentation, in their things. Or sometimes when they're writing about things that their language is it's not very inclusive. So that again is something that women, did not like and also tried to change, as was observed in these discussion forums. Another thing that we had previously talked a little bit about is this idea that men complain when you create a women-only space. So this, there was this idea in these forums too. So the forums became like, we are not exclusionary. We are not women only, we are women focused. So you can join this community. So there are examples of men who are actually in these forums, and they are oftentimes allies and they're sharing their experiences. But they're also harassers. So I'll share an example where this person came into women's forums and is creating a toxic environment even in this space that is for women to experience as a safe space. There's also this idea of benevolent sexism, right? So there is this, that you can have a women-only group, you can meet yourselves as long as you're not doing something that is contradictory to what we are proposing in our community or what we want for our community. So you can do your little thing as long as you don't change it. So benevolent sexism. So here's some, I really wanted to share quotes in response to this, in this article. So if you have a chance to look at the article, then you will see there's a lot of quotes there, but I also wanted to bring some representative concepts here as well. So for example, this idea of the persistent harassment. What are the women saying about that? So she says, I completely sympathize with you, and you're among friends here. Countless women on this list still experience this. And by this, they're talking about misogyny and harassment. And that's why we are here, to support each other. When I was reading these snippets that are all about persistent and normalized experiences, these are messages going all the way back from 2002 to, or 2018 or so. And it just automatically just made me think of the Me Too movement. It was really a documentation of that type of experience here. And the impact of these, they're talking about impact. One of the things that I've been interested in is knowing why women quit, right? When women leave technology, why do they do that? And oftentimes, that is again another elusive demographic to kind of collect data from. In this context, because it is all documented at that time, I was actually able to get an insight of what happens before someone quits, right? Why did they choose to quit eventually? So the impact of such common shared experience is that it normalizes the abuse because of its commonality. And therein lies the significance of this impact. I wouldn't hit that is such a common response to any story about a female, no matter the context. So, this idea that, oh, she's not even hot, or she's like a 3 of 10 or whatever. This is such a common way of communicating about women in any context that it becomes really normalized. This kind of abuse is normalized. The next excerpt is about unsolicited harassment. So here's an example. Today I posted a response on the country name, software name mailing list. What a surprise to find tonight a private email in my inbox asking me my age, to send pictures, if I had a boyfriend, husband, the usual crap. I'm so totally sick about that. And right now my mood is devastating. So this is the emotional impact that she is describing of this kind of harassment, which again, if it is going to the private email, of course, her colleagues, peers, allies, males wouldn't even know about this because it's targeted to her. Someone talking about how when they contributed to open source software, but it was an intimidating process, both because it's not very well explained and because of the fear of being told I'm an idiot. I don't see much of that in the Python community, but in part of geek world online, the I rock, you suck, smackdown is very common. So again, another type of harassment. I think I need to go even faster. So this is again another one. The last excerpt is about actually death threats and sexual violence to a woman being sent into their message. This is the not being heard, the one that I thought was very important to share. It talks about, I'm not going to take this complaint to the community council because John is on community council and he's their mate. He's the friend of person who's creating a problem. I also feel that I'd be cross-examined and it would prolong it. So this particular group is just not worth that to me. So this is someone who's planning to quit because they can't even go to the community council because the person who's being abusive to them is a friend with somebody there. Okay, quickly. Yes. This is the disruptive person saying, please, women, go away. So I'm going to quickly move there. So this is another, set of, like I said, this is the paper that I've tried many times to publish. So this is a lot of material that I've condensed in this paper. So this is an example about support, and this support is used to create advocacy. This is example of harm. So the impact, the harm thing is important to understand is that it is a continuum of harm. And so it goes from very mild to very extreme. The rape and death thing is extreme, but then the mild things are like regular dismissions, right? And these are again some more quotes, but I'll stop with the recommendations for communities. And so these are create and support women-focused online spaces, highlight the success of women contributors for good role models, support women's engagement in advocacy, address all instances of abuse to limit that normalization that we talked about, develop custom and enforce custom codes of conduct codes of conducts, and highlight the role of allies, encourage and empower women to join the community councils, and institute reporting mechanisms. So.
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. So I saw that there is maybe one question already in the chat. So Miguel, you formulated the first question, if I remember right. So do you want to ask yourself to Vandana?
Sure, I was picking up on this comment. But do you think there's any bias in the research community against this kind of topic or this kind of research?
I think so, yes.
Because this is something that worries me, because I'm also doing some gender-related publications.
Yeah.
And I've seen instances of this, but I don't know how isolated they were. So I was wondering.
Yeah. So, I have done a lot of work and I've published a lot of different things, but when I'm talking about, codes of conduct, how they can be improved, that has been a good, simple process. But this particular article, because it so directly wants to analyze the nature of sexism and discrimination, has really felt very, it has, for me, it has felt a struggle to put this out. And that's why I was like, even if it's a smaller condensed version. And interestingly, one of the comment I got from the reviewers for GEXC was, this should be somewhere bigger because you are in a way hiding this in a smaller place. And I was like, only if I could talk to you and tell you that everywhere else it's been sent back so many times. So I'm just happy that it's out there, and people can pick up on it and do more work or cite it or something. At least it's out there, because it's important to know what's going on if we want to fix it.
But do they dismiss it as like a social sciences paper or something?
No, the criticism was that this is very small in numbers. This is not happening as much, and we shouldn't be, the way you're writing it, it seems like this is going on everywhere. While I'm very clearly saying it's only 8 to 10% of the overall messages that I did. So this placement of this as a problem was the issue. Like, we can say it's happening, but we can't say, let's look deeper into it, because the real impact of this is that there are 2 to 3% women in open source software, right? That is the real impact.
Thank you very much for your answer for the questions. So there are other questions from the audience?
I would actually like to ask, have you checked?
Hi, Ari. Nice
Hello.
to see you again.
Once again, have you compared this to electronic sports? There is a lot of similarities there. There is a lot more males than females. They are most likely in same age group. And we know that there is this kind of a discrimination, and actually female players are hiding their gender behind male-like these player names.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even in one of these slides I had that is that women, one of the reasons to do this work is that women don't get recognized for the reputation that they build in the open source community because they didn't do it with their real name. So there's definitely that. I think in terms of comparing it with the, particularly the gaming industry, I haven't done the comparison, but I think you're right. I think there might be more women there, and experiences might be similar or not, but I think in OSS, the number really is like everyone talks about being the only one, or always being having to be the representative of all women everywhere because I'm the one person sitting there, and then the other people are like, what would a woman like in this system to be? So yes, I think that's a good comparison to do in the future with the gaming industry.
Yeah. And the other thing that came to my mind is previously we were talking about the stereotypes, and there is sort of a young male coding alone at home, socially impaired person type. And if you take this kind of, okay, you have this kind of a person, and then you are surprised that, okay, there is a lady who is coding, and I haven't seen any of those. You would expect some of them send this message, do you have a boyfriend? And kind of, I haven't never seen any lady being interested in coding and stuff like that. I'm not saying it's right to do that, and definitely probably too direct approach. But I'm thinking just that maybe some of them just behave, how would you say, socially wrong, but don't mean harm. But because the difference between how many males and females you have, that of course surfaces quite easily.
Yeah, the volume is skewed, but also you're looking at the intent and not the impact, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the impact is on the woman, and so the different types of, like, just even observing all these messages which are there for perpetuity, right? If somebody looks at it and says, oh, why would I even bother contributing to open source software if it is so, toxic?
Yeah, Yeah, exactly.
That is like the extended collective harm for the community.
Yeah, the result is as bad, even if the intent is not like, let's say,
sorry
verbal.
if I have to interrupt you, but the time is finished, so we have to respect the time for the presentation. Sorry, but if you want to discuss it, there is also the chat, and you can also have many insight later. So I want to check if there is the presenter, Luciana, for Can Hackathon